I have a small favor to ask that takes you literally a few seconds. If you like the first 100 podcasts and the guests that we have invited so far, can you do me a small favor and give us a thumbs up on any podcast platform that you are listening on? It helps the podcast more than you think, because the higher we go on the ranking, the more interesting guests we can invite. Thank you again for your support.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Broadcasting from around the world, you're listening to The First 100, a podcast on how founders acquired their first 100 paying customers. Here's your host, Hadi Radwan.
Good to have you on the show, Fabien. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Thank you for joining The First 100. You have a very interesting story. For our listeners, just a quick introduction. Fabien Pinckaers is the founder of Odoo, which is a Belgium-based provider of open source business software that ranges from inventory management, ERP, human resource, CRM, marketing tools, accounting tools, you name it. Odoo has it. And you've done all of this just with 10 million of fundraising. To date, you have more than 10 million users on the platform, and you've shown like an open source project can work and can be valued at $1 billion valuation, as we've seen in 2021 when you've done your secondary market. Take us back to the early days, Fabien. Did young Fabien exhibit any signs of entrepreneurship?
Yes, I love to build things, and I think it's one of the mindset an entrepreneur should have is creating value, building stuff. And so I started as a developer, but I was being very interested in enterprise management, leadership very early on.
And if you go back to the early days when you started, before you started Odoo, what made you go that route versus building something else?
Oh, I didn't take this route. I did a lot of things. It's just that Odoo works better than the other. I did e-commerce, I developed antivirus, I developed a lot of platforms and tools. I had a t-shirt e-commerce that was quite good online shop. And at some point, I decided to stop everything and refocus on what I love, which is management software, and stop all the other activities. It was basically 20 years ago.
Amazing. If you think about these old businesses, what businesses you think had a lot of potential but you had to drop? And then what businesses did you focus a lot of effort on? You failed, but you learned a lot in building Odoo.
I was a student, so it's not like it failed. Most of my activities were very good revenue for a student. I could afford to recruit the first 2 employees and pay them and things like that. So it was not a failure per se, but it was not the kind of business where you can build $1 billion software. I always remember a quote from Paul Graham. It was something like, if you want to build a great company, solve a very complex problem. And Odoo is the first really, really complex, the kind of problem that I decided to solve. It's like the kind of problem where you need decades to make it work, to simplify the way companies operate, to make IT technology affordable to SMEs so that they can basically run their whole business. It's really a complex problem, and that's what I love in what we do.
Amazing. For the listeners who have just joined, can you give us a small masterclass on what's open source? Because your business is running on open source. Why you think open source is something that you've veered forward to, and where do you see advantages going forward?
Yes. So traditionally, licenses are there to put constraints on the user. You buy maximum 100 users, you can do this, some feature you have to pay to get them. So the license is there to put a few constraints on what you can do and what you can do. An open source license is the opposite. It gives some freedom to the user. So it guarantees that anyone can download the software, modify it, study it, copy it to their friends. And so he has a full freedom of using and modifying and distributing the software. So I was always been passionate about open source. So for me, it was not a business model at the beginning. I used open source. I wanted to develop open source. No big strategy behind. It turns out that it was a very difficult business model. So it was a very good development model because you get contribution from all around the world. Developers help you, but at the same time, nobody pays for it. So you had to develop another business model where you can sell something. We started to sell support services and upgrades, so they paid us to get support. It was good at the beginning, but after 1 year, they deployed the software, they used our support, and everything was working smoothly. And they said, why should I renew my support contract? So it was not a good business model. So we ended up with a mix between what we call an open core business model. 80% of our applications are open source, and we sell 20% of our applications in extra. So open source for me is more a development model than a business model. It's a way to collaborate with communities to build great software. We have the biggest enterprise app store in the world with 40,000 applications because of this open source development model. But it's not a good business model, so we had to complement it with extra features to sell that are not open source.
Amazing. Take us back to the early days of Odoo. What app did you start with early on? What niche did you focus on? And then how did you expand it over the years?
I think I did the opposite of most traditional startups. The MVP, minimum viable product, or you start with one thing that you do clean and then you expand later on. I did the complete opposite. I started with everything. Sales, purchase, inventory, accounting. And I built a full ERP right away. Obviously, it took a few years to be mature, but I really started with the big picture and improved it over time, instead of a clean product that do just one thing.
I mean, this is against what investors usually like. So how did you convince your early maybe investors to give you money? Because a full ERP for a couple of years needs funding, and users will not come in day one, as you mentioned. So how did you sustain that model early on?
For me, it was very easy because I had nobody to convince. I bootstrapped everything. So I started alone, grew the company to 100 people on a service model. So at the beginning, I was selling a service. I developed the feature the customer asked for and was doing R&D on the side to build this product with the vision we had. It was very hard because obviously the margin of a service company doesn't allow strong marketing and research and development investment. So we really struggled on the cash flow, but we pushed hard. We worked nights and days, and we developed such a product in maybe 10 years. And at that level, once we had 100 employees, I decided to do a pivot in the business model and stop selling services, but start selling subscriptions in order to get better margin and invest more in the product and in marketing rather than developing all the features the customer wanted for. And then I did my first fundraising to do that because I stopped all my revenues from one day to another. It was quite risky. And we get 3 million euro in 2010. We did the pivot. We launched a partner network all around the world. In 3 years, we were in 100 countries. And these guys did the service on the software. And what we focused on was developing the software, marketing it, and selling maintenance contracts.
Amazing. I mean, if you think about your model, you're competing with almost everyone. Because if I go to your dashboard, you have accounting tools, you have CRM, you have e-commerce. So when you think about your positioning at the beginning, how did you attract customers to your funnel? What was your early strategy to get people to use your ERP solution?
Initially, we attract developers because we were open sourced. So we were strongly based in open source communities, the people who wanted something for free, we wanted to play with the source code, they wanted to contribute, customize, and so on. But that was 10 to 15 years ago. And nowadays, it's not that way anymore. As the software is way more mature, a lot of people use it out of the box. So not everyone is a contributor today. They come for the quality of the product. And now it's different. The way we attract a customer is we have two types of offer. On single apps, we don't compete with the other. Everything is free. Even the hosting, support, maintenance. So not only the software because it's open source, but also all services. So let's say you want a website. You get something like Shopify. It's free. Website with domain name, hosting, everything free on Odoo. You want an accounting software or CRM, email, something to sign document or to sign. Everything's free. And we only charge if people want more than one application. And there we charge 20 euro per user and per month for all the applications. So basically you run the whole company for 20 euro.
So if you're one person, you just need 20
euro, and people 200 euro, and you get from CRM to the website, inventory, manufacturing, everything you want.
Yeah. So basically you're covering one employee all the way to thousands of employees who could.
Yeah, that's very specific to Odoo. Usually you have simple software for small companies, but they just do a few features. And very complex but bloated and expensive software for large companies that do all the features and that integrate everything. We are an exception. We are probably the only software in the world that range for one user, self-employed people who can do their billing and small website with Odoo, up to our large clients have 10,000 employees, users, because we run everything on Odoo. So we are at the same time super easy so that everyone can use, including the small companies, and at the same time very complete because we have all the features that a large corporation needs.
Makes a lot of sense. Moving now to, the non-developer market, you talk about now you're building an open source for the non-technical users. Other than having this organic blast after a few years, what were non-scalable strategy that you've used early on to acquire these non-technical users to the paid plan, let's say?
So I would say the success of Odoo has always been the same. It's the product. Because our product is way ahead of the market, because it's so good that everything we have built was basically word of mouth. And it's happy client that brings more clients. And our strategy has always been that. So our sales or marketing is much easier because we are a very, very good product. So our strategy was basically put all our effort on the product and don't defocus for 20 years. And do that for most companies as they grow, they start to have extra product to acquire new company, to launch new departments, new lines of service, whatever. We did the complete opposite. We said we have one product and we focus everything and we do it for 20 years.
That's amazing. I mean, if you think about it as you're building a product like this, sometimes there's the lag between how much features you've built and then how many users are coming to utilize it. Were there an inflection point that you would have it would have gone the other way, saying, okay, I'm going to give up now because something is not working? Is there an inflection point in your journey?
No, it's not like there was an inflection point. If you look at the growth in the revenue, whether growth in number of employees or revenue of the company, we never did very, very strong growth. We never did 200% in a year, or there was not something like that. But what we did is 50% growth year after year for 15 years on average. And it gets quickly big. So now we have 4,000 employees, 50%. We mean over the next 12 months, we will recruit 2,000 employees. So we never did something big, but we constantly deliver, improve, and we get this 50% year after year.
Amazing. This is, it's a
no magic formula. It's just hard work for 20 years, no inflection point. It's just year after year get you to 50%.
Interestingly enough, I would like to know, how do you prioritize product features? So how do you decide what to build next? How do you test out that this is a feature your users need? So
we do management software, and most management software are designed for managers. Like they have beautiful dashboards, a good benchmark, whatever managers decide. Our vision is different. Our vision is to empower every employee of the company. It's kind of a productivity tools for the businesses, for accountants, for workers, for the cashier, for the point of sale, whatever. So we emphasize a lot on the end user and to make every people more efficient. So one of the things we do is just to sit next to our users and look at where they are wasting time. For instance, if you look at our accountant work, they spend majority of the time recording data. Then we build artificial intelligence, we connect with bank, and everything is recorded automatically. Now they only have to validate. If you sit next to a recruiter, you will notice that 50% of their email is about scheduling meeting. First interview, second interview, the candidates reschedule, the manager reschedule. But really, 50% of the email of a recruiter is about scheduling meeting. That's kind of a shitty job, I would say. So what do? We automate that. We have Odoo appointments where the candidate can book a meeting with this 3 recruiter, do the interview directly, have a pre-qualification form. So we automate all those things. So we prioritize features based on how much time we save for the end users.
What technique do you follow to test after that feature is built if it has solved a pain point? Is there any specific techniques you follow?
No, it's not so much quantitative, it's more qualitative. So we don't measure that much, even though we have some measures. But usually when something is good, it's obvious. You see, you just ask the user, they will tell you, I'm saving that much time. So if it's a good feature, there is no need to measure, it's really obvious. What we measure is before implementing the feature. We do user tests, we record videos of people using our software, and we organize sessions when we work with Lambda user, ask them to do something like receive product, deliver products, sell online, create your website, and we analyze where they struggle.
Amazing. I mean, you follow a PLG model. Basically, your product is leading the growth because it's solving the pain point. If a listener today is listening to this, what are three takeaways that you could advise on when people are focusing on a PLG strategy?
I think a lot of companies say focus is important, but the majority of them don't focus. So the first thing is to focus. Look at the agenda of the CEO, for example. Most of them have meetings all the time, several per days. You can't focus on the product when your life is like that. I spend 50% of my time on the product. I have maximum 2 or 3 meetings per week. So this is a real focus. I mean, if you don't think about the product all the time, you are not. It's not your priority.
Amazing. What are things that you've learned along your journey in terms of acquisition of customers that probably you wouldn't repeat if you started a new company from scratch?
One of the biggest mistakes I've done is when we did a switch in our business model, so we started as a fully open source product selling maintenance. And at some point we moved to an open core product where majority of the apps are open source, but we sell a few ones that are not. We deceived our community because over the past 10 years, we had a communication about open source is great, proprietary is bad, we'll never do it. And our community joined us because of that. And when we struggled so much that we are close to bankruptcy, we had to do a pivot in the business model in order to generate enough revenue to invest in R&D. We deceived then, and we have had a lot of bad communication, people complaining, some partners leaving, and so on and so on. The mistake I did was not to change the business model. I think it was great. The situation is much better now. We contribute 10 times more to open source because we could recruit 10 times more people. The partners are way more profitable. So it was a great decision. The issue I did was to not communicate on that before. If the communication would have been, okay, we are open source today, but at some point we will have to find a better business model, everyone would have agreed. But I didn't manage the expectation efficiently. Of course, I didn't know at the time, but looking back, I could have saved maybe 1 year of development if I have known that.
What is something that people misunderstand about you?
I don't know. I think they don't care about me. Everyone cares about himself, not about the others. I'm pretty open and transparent, so I don't think people misunderstand me on things.
Okay, amazing. What is a principle that you live by that has served you well on your journey?
No, it's a large question. Product first, of course. Lead by example. Something we do that I love to do is that we never recruit team leaders or directors or managers. The only way to become a team leader is to be the best of the team. So it's only internal promotion, and that guarantees the culture and the efficiency that we have.
Amazing. One last question, Fabien. What's next for Odoo?
In order to predict the future, you have to understand the past. So if you look at the past in the IT market, it started with operating system. MS-DOS, Dr. DOS, Unix, Minix, there was plenty of operating systems. Fast forward today, it's only Windows, iOS, and Linux for the servers. And then came the Office tools, because in addition to the technical complexity of operating system, they also have the end-user interface complexity. And you had Works, WordPerfect, Lotus 123 for all people who follow us. Fast forward today, it's only Microsoft Office and Google Workspace. Only 2 players survived because the market became a commodity. I believe management software will follow the same trend. We are still at a moment in the history where it's not very mature. It's not a commodity, affordable in a few clicks and a few euros for everyone. And so we still have thousands of players in the field. but people will consolidate, and at some point, 1, 2, or 3 software, I don't know, will have the whole market. So my goal for Odoo in the future is just that, is to survive, to own this market.
Do you think, on a follow-up on this question, do you think even the channels and the customer profiles will merge? Because today you have the enterprise clients, you have mid-market, and then you have probably the small enterprises. Would also these consolidate, like Odoo serves all 3 different ICPs?
No, yeah, you're right. Today, some software vendors see different industries. So they have software for the food industry, for aeronautic, for manufacturing, and so on and so on. I believe that 90% is generic. Accounting is accounting. A website is a website. A CRM is a CRM. It's more or less the same for everyone. But 10% is dependent on the industry. If you are in the food industry, you will have expiry dates on your lot number or product and so on. And so it's not so much about different products. I believe because 90% is generic, one product will do everything, and it's going to be Odoo. But this product should be mature enough to have the capabilities required for every industry as extra feature or modules. And this is the way we work with Odoo. We have a strong core that have applications for all the needs of the company. And then we have these 40,000 community apps that handle every specific feature that you may need in an industry, like the expiry dates for the lot numbers for the food industry. So if you have a mature ecosystem, which is a strong base of product which is generic, plus the specificities of every country, could be compliance in accounting for all countries, it could be a specific feature for industries, then you have a real leader.
Fabien, thank you very much for joining the podcast. This was an amazing episode. How can people reach you? And you said you're hiring. Where can we find the hiring information?
It's on odoo.com/jobs. Or we do something pretty cool. We publish our average salaries, not in every country, in the ones where we have our payroll. So you can go to odoo.com/jobs and test your salary configurator and configure your salary. Like, I have that many years of experience in that field, and it tells you how much we will pay you. And with all the benefits and so on.
And how can people reach you?
Maybe on LinkedIn. Fabien Pinckaers.
We'll put all of these in the show notes. Thank you again, and we wish you the best of luck on your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the First 100. We hope it inspired you in your journey. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or Spotify, and share it with a friend starting their entrepreneurship journey. Leave us a 5-star review. Your support will help spread our podcast to more viewers.